Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webcast this morning. My name is Karen Greer, and I'm CEO of Secure Content Technologies. Secure Content is a nationwide cybersecurity solutions provider, and I'm super happy to be here today with my great friend and colleague, John Pierre-Felice with Sophos. Our topic today is managed detection and response, and how Sophos can help you deliver superior security outcomes by using their MDR cybersecurity as a service solution. MDR will give you 24/7 threat hunting, along with so much more, all of which John is going to cover in detail for you today. So with that, John, I'm going to pass it to you, and off we go.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Karen. So first of all, pleasure to meet everybody. And obviously, really excited to talk to you guys about MDR. This is something that has become, I would say, almost a necessity in the day and age that we live in. And it's really a matter of, we look at the tools and the technology that we've had access to in the past, understanding how it's manipulated, how it's been leveraged, how it's been augmented. Let's start with the basics, though. So MDR, for those of you who are unfamiliar, managed detection and response. I think we need to take even a step back further. This really started with the evolution of the security tools that we have. So we all are familiar with antivirus. This is a bare necessity that needs to be on every machine, every asset that we have. But what happened was we started to see an increase in cyber attacks, and there was a necessity for people to have better access to better, more sophisticated tooling. This spawned in turn EDR, or endpoint detection and response. This was the ability to live on every asset, endpoint, and server you had, and you were then equipped with the tool to go out and become a threat hunter. This even spawned the evolution of what we now see today in the market as XDR, extended detection and response. So having a tool that goes beyond endpoint and can access visibility into firewalls and email platforms, identity tooling, public cloud. This really allowed you to extend your visibility, extend your reach, and access so much more from a threat hunting perspective. The reality of the situation is most people don't have an unlimited budget, and most security teams can't go out and hire the minimum amount of people required to manage an internal SOC, which is upwards of about 16 to 20 plus people on rotation 24/7, all being trained, all skilled with the expertise to know how to go out and not only perform proactive threat hunts, but reactively conduct investigations on identified activity. This is where we landed and spawned with MDR. And by design, it's here to really achieve, in our professional opinion, the three gaps that most teams have, which you can see on the left-hand side are people, process, and technology. So when we talk about a people gap, this is really the headcount issue I brought up before. Most people can't go out and hire an adequate team. And when we talk about process flow, being able to coordinate a team of that size, understanding how to identify and collect data, how to elevate activity that needs to be bubbled into a case, who's managing the case, who's conducting the investigation, who is actually going out and applying logic during that investigation to know if the threat is a true positive or a false positive. And if it's true, how do you respond to it? And if that true positive is an active incident, how do you escalate to a point of incident response where you know how to go through full triage and neutralization efforts? There's a laundry list of things that process flow has to be managed, and this is really where MDR comes in and shines the most. And from a technology perspective, we have to understand that, even at Sophos, we know there are other tools besides Sophos tools. So how do we manipulate technology in a way where we can ingest valuable data? When we talk about outcomes, driving legitimate security outcomes really starts with being able to ingest valid and appropriate telemetry. And this is where Sophos has landed today. We really wanted to be, in our position, one of the most agnostic MDRs out there, but also holistically sound, where not only can we tap into the very broad spectrum of Sophos technologies that we offer, from endpoint, server, firewall, email, cloud, and even network, but we also wanted to make sure that we could replicate a SIM-based approach without acting as one. And I want to clarify what that means. So all of these different vendors you see on the bottom, the firewall integrations with like a Palo Alto or a SonicWall, identity integrations into Duo or Okta. Traditionally, we see in this landscape a lot of MDRs take a SIM-based approach. It's a very easy methodology to stand up a SIM, tell your customers, send us your data, And then they rely on the static rules from that SIM to elevate activity. And then that SOC team will go out and send escalation emails saying, you have risk. Here's what you need to go look at. For us, we wanted to replicate what a SIM does, which in all intents and purposes, a SIM is a security information and event management tool. We wanted to design our own functionality where we could create custom connectors for the tooling that we want to ingest data from, where we can manipulate it from start to finish, the data ingest all the way to the case creation. We have total control and we don't rely on another vendor's tool to help us identify risk. So this is a very important piece. It really does delineate what we do as a vendor compared to what other MDRs can facilitate. Now, as we expand this out, we talked about those different platforms: identity, cloud, firewall, network. All of this funnels into our Sophos data lake. And the core objective is, let's process it down this funnel, if you will. We've all seen the funnel. We know the purpose of the funnel. It's there to take a bunch of noise and basically trickle it down into true legitimate activity. And this is really the same across the board with us, but obviously we have a little bit more control about how we manage this funnel. So at the top, all of these security events that we're generating from these tools, it's fantastic that we can have a repository to send them to. But as we go into the detections tab right below, this is where we get to have more manipulative control. We have our own custom detection engineering team here at Sophos, where they are on the front lines, making sure that any new 0 days that pop up, any major security concerns, we can augment not only the way we collect data via our XDR tool set, but we can also augment how we correlate and score those detections as well. So some other vendors, you might have a Fortinet firewall, and it might create a detection, and that detection might be assigned on their scoring system a 4. But for us, if we see multiple detections and we also see concurrent activity across the endpoint or the identity space, we might score that a 7 or an 8 because it has a higher fidelity and a truer accuracy. So once we go through and we create our own custom scoring, it gives us the customization to then create cases based off of what we feel is legitimate security concerns. And in turn, as our tier 1 and tier 2 analysts work through those cases, if there is anything that is a legitimate concern, it gets escalated for review. And in turn, if that escalation does identify true active incidents, we would then escalate it to our tier 3 incident response team. So the process flow for how we manage this is so much different than other vendors, when many of them require like a separate retainer where they can go through and apply logic. But if you truly need help, there might be a need for additional spend and additional deployment of resources. This is where we get to simplify the process flow entirely. And not just simplify the process flow, but we want to make this a quick and timely cleanup. So you can see here on the left, 99.9+% of threats are blocked automatically, and that's by our CIXA Intercept X agent. So how does this happen? In all reality, we have 550,000 global customers under the Sophos platform. I think you can understand the broad strokes of data collection that we can get and the sheer threat intelligence that we can capture. We've got 100 million plus endpoints being protected. We've got hundreds of thousands of Sophos firewalls and email gateways. So we're grabbing unbelievable amounts of knowledge. This helps us bolster the front lines. But this is also important because if we block more threats up front, we get to save our analysts time for true identification of risk. So this is why when you see 38 minutes, this was actually our 2022 average response time for threats. It's 2 a.m., your security team's asleep on a Saturday trying to recover from a busy week. Something happens by 3 o'clock in the morning. Our team has already seen it, investigated it, and output a response, not just a notification in your inbox saying you've got risk, and not just a collaboration with Karen and her team. This is true partnership where we can go in and stop any damage, prevent disaster, and then work with the appropriate parties to ensure that we shore up the attack surface and prevent risk from happening again. This is the level of excellence that we want. This is what we want to bring. This is what we strive for every day at Sophos. Now we have two models that I want to talk about. I think it's important on the front lines just to understand this as we dive more, because we are going to talk about the delineation factors here. We have MDR and MDR complete, and the core differentiators between these two, and this is my be a point in time where I break out my trusty pen because this helps a little bit. So this is going to be really the major difference between these two tiers. And what we classify this difference at is full-scale incident response. So in the world of what I would classify as threats, we have two key areas of how we can assist in the management of risk. This is threat response and incident response. So when we talk about threat response, this is, hey, there's a threat, we need to go out and respond to it. That could be containment, that could be disruption, that could be prevention of spread. Anything that needs to be done to stop the damage from happening or continuing, threat response is critical. When we talk about incident response, this is the complete eradication and removal of the threat actor and the entity itself. I always like to use just the basic analogy. Think of your endpoints or your computers that you have as buildings in an apartment complex. So let's say rats show up in room 102. There is a threat that needs to be responded to. You call the exterminator, they come out, they get rid of the rats. The reality is the rats got into room 102 somehow. They either got in from outside the building, they snuck into the walls, they nested, they went into the attic, they sniffed around, they smelled the food in room 102, and they showed up. So when we talk about incident response, it's great that there is threat response that is able to go out and know that there's a threat on that particular machine 102, if you will. They go out, they contain it, they stop the threat, they prevent the spread. But when we talk about true incident response, we know that there are rats in the building, and that IR is that complete eradication where you call in the bug bomb, if you will, and you wrap the building and you exterminate the threat, you find how they got in, you neutralize the nests. That is the differentiator between those two. So when we talk about Sophos tiers, we wanted to offer both. Some teams are more prepared to handle incidents. Some teams might have a retainer already on standby. So you don't need to go with that full scale IR. We have options for both, and we want to ensure that any level of preparedness that your business is, we are there to help. That is the core objective, is we want to fit any model and fit any tools that you have. Now, when we talk about the inclusions of the service, it's also important to what Sophos provides out of the box. Any Sophos tools that you use automatically are going to be included as an integration. What that means is if you use Sophos Firewall, it automatically sends data to the SOC. There's no need for additional spend. So there is some incentive to say, hey, you know what, maybe we're not entirely happy with our firewall, or we're up for renewal in 3 months. Let's see what you guys can offer for a firewall perspective for us, because we'd love to reduce our spend and get a better, more superior product that could tie into the SOC that offers. We have options for that. We also build in our Microsoft Graph Security and Management APIs. So if you are a Microsoft 365 user, any of your Defender products, if you're tied into Azure Active Directory, if you even leverage them for their email platform, we can ingest any security related concerns based off of the licensing you have. So whatever licensing they give you, they typically a lot better alerting and better API access. So we can pull in whatever you have. From a management perspective, this is really good for understanding user and admin activity. Is somebody granted too much permission? Are they augmenting policies or settings? Is your Azure Active Directory firing off crazy alerts? This is where we have visibility out of the box into this, along with 90 days of static retention. So we can check the box, and most compliance requirements don't mandate unbelievably long-term storage. So 90 days normally satiates that necessity for those compliance requirements. But if you need more, we also offer 1 year of data retention, along with a lot of the integrations that I spoke to before. So maybe you're using a third-party firewall vendor and you love Cisco. I don't want to have to tell you you don't get to use your Cisco product in order to leverage us for an MDR. That's not successful. So keep the tools that you love, let us tie into them and understand what they are creating from a data perspective. Let us wear the threat hunting hat, and we can do this for firewall, identity, public cloud, email, and even network. I want to highlight network specifically because Sophos does also have their own network detection and response. I know a lot of people don't already have NDRs deployed or network monitoring tools set up. So this is a really good way to partner with Sophos and have a team that can really cover most of the attack surface. When you think about it, We're covering endpoint, server, firewall, public cloud, email identity, and network. These are the major attack surfaces that threat actors use to get inside. And if we can have visibility on all of them, the success level that a SOC team can have with that information is huge. And having a team that can provide that response and or true full-scale incident response with all of this information present really does generate, when we talk about security outcomes, we know most people out there, they want to keep their doors open and they want to stay safe from ransomware. These are the outcomes we want to deliver, is true legitimate protection, so you never have to shut your doors. Now, I wanted to expand a little bit from a Sophos portfolio. We talked a little bit about MDR already, being that 24/7 coverage. They are going to be your threat hunting team. It's important to understand that we have a separate incident response service here at Sophos, and it is instrumental in helping build knowledge and understanding the threats that are out there. We have had upwards of 500 plus standalone disaster recovery efforts where customers have come to us for assistance, and we have gotten in, completely neutralized the threat, and ensured that they are safe. When you go with Sophos MDR, and specifically when you go with the complete offering that has the incident response built in, you will never need to buy a standalone incident response service ever again. That is all encompassing, and that is there to make sure that if anything ever happens, and I want to preface this, our incident response in MDR is pre-disaster response. So we want to see an incident happening in real time and stop it before it causes damage, rather than allow an incident to happen. It's already caused damage, and then you're calling a team to help you recover. So this is really important to understand. We do not offer incident response in MDR as a, we're going to let you get hit with ransomware and then step in. That is not the purpose. Our purpose is to catch an incident happening as early in the kill chain as possible and prevent the damage from ever persisting to the point where you do have successful encryption or you do have to shut your doors. That is what we want to prevent. Now, I also wanted to highlight the compromise assessment piece because this is really important. We understand that not everybody can move into an MDR solution tomorrow. We get it. There's budget, there's concerns, there's research that has to be done. If there is ever an instance where you are concerned that you have been breached and you don't have Sophos MDR, you don't even have to use Sophos tools. If you are ever concerned about a breach, we offer the ability to come in and verify via a compromise assessment if you have been successfully compromised. This is really beneficial as well for people who potentially do expansions or acquisitions. Maybe you bring in another company, and before you bring them under your umbrella, you want to make sure they're safe and their machines aren't compromised. We can also run a compromise assessment of new acquisitions as well. But this is the portfolio. We want to make sure if you aren't on MDR and you're concerned, you have an option to assess risk. If you do happen to get hit and you don't have MDR, we can still jump in and help. But our goal is we want you on that prevention. We want you on that mitigation. We want to never have to have you guys ever worry or be worried that you are going to get hit or that you have been hit. So I did want to delineate those two separate categories from MDR. Now, Karen, I might tap your shoulder really quick on this one because you live in this world where you're probably talking to people all the time. They're not sure if they're hit. They're not sure if they're under attack. What do you typically see in this space? You know, when we got customers who just, and no fault of their own, they just don't know because they're not threat hunters. They're not security experts. How do you see us really fitting into this world, and what have you seen?
I have seen Sophos fit into this world perfectly for us. We actually have had a couple recent experiences with the rapid response team in which a local company had been hit by ransomware, and their IT guy thought that he had it remediated for them, only to find out a week later that the threat actor had remained in their environment for the full week, and once again everything was locked up.
Yep.
We were brought in and contacted Sophos Rapid Response, and within 2 hours we had all parties connected, and Rapid Response went to work right away to find the threat and remediate it.
Awesome.
It was just a wonderful experience, and not only did they have the expertise to find and remediate the threat, the way they handled it put the client at ease, right?
Yeah.
Their mindset was fully at ease.
And that's what we want to do. I mean, even our rapid response, we actually augment it. We don't do by hour. We do per machine. So this makes it very flexible to know you're not on the clock. You don't, hey, we bought 100 hours, we're running out in 2 days and it's only been a week and a half and we need to buy more. And we also do 45 days. So this is not only true incident response with no cap on hours or engagements. It's just, hey, whenever you need us to come in and deal with an incident, we give you 45 days. If it takes us 7 or 42, does not matter. You don't see an increase in that bill. But any leftover days, we actually give you Sophos MDR for the remainder of that 45-day subscription. And that's really for the purpose of, we know these threat actors come back and they try and they try and they try again on the targets they hit before, because they know they have a greater chance of catching someone who's just going to restore a machine from backup and think they got rid of the threat. It's not the case. So we do it a little differently. I'm glad that experience as well. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get that person on MDR after, because they don't want to deal with an incident again. And I think that's the goal. So let's dive into a little bit of a different approach. Let's talk about the threat hunting methodology and why this is so valuable. So we understand, and we have to be cognizant of this. There is no technology that will ever be 100% preventative of threats. It's not a possibility in this world. I have to tell people consistently, I love our tool. I love our Sophos Intercept X, but it is not a silver bullet in any way, shape, or form. It will never stop everything, because that tool is designed to block what's known and to best guess via predictive machine learning what is coming. But the reality is these 0 days pop up left and right, and no machine learning or no type of endpoint platform will know it before it pops up. So we have to accept the fact that these attackers, they are very manipulative in their approach. They look for multiple ways, exploits, vulnerabilities, anything that they can use at their disposal. So what we want to do is really have a human-led approach to threat hunting. Our objective is, we know that the MITRE attack framework and all of the stages, from initial access to persistence to credential theft, which is the biggest issue today, is having your credentials stolen via a phishing attempt. We get it, we know it. All of these tools below, you look at PowerShell, you look at RDP, which I'll ask everybody on this call here. I'm going to ask a plea. Please do not use RDP. If there is another remote desktop tool that you can leverage, RDP is the most susceptible to threat actors taking advantage of it. But this is what we focus on. We know that PowerShell is going to be abused. We know that things like PsExec, which basically allows any process to be executed, it is going to be abused by threat actors. Our thought process is, when we go into a threat hunt, number one, we want to have a hypothesis, and this hypothesis can be formed through multiple different ways. For reference, we have 500 plus bodies in our SOC. And of those bodies, we have people in our labs team that are analyzing new threats from all of our tools. We have open source intelligence threat hunters that are out in the wild scouring for just general hypotheses, maybe something that just popped up on Twitter, which has hilariously become one of the best threat feeds for threat intelligence, because security professionals are out in the world going, hey, this is new, you should be concerned about it. And we get to tap into that knowledge, build a hypothesis, and then we get to go out and hunt for that risk. So when we talk about acquiring data, this is using all of those integrations we talked about. This is using our endpoint XDR to scour every MDR customer and see if they are at risk. I always like to tell people, as an MDR customer, you get to be guinea pigs for every single threat experiment that our labs team wants to conduct. Because at the end of the day, we want you guys to be the first ones to be checked if there's risk. That is part of the service, is going out in the wild and looking to see if you are susceptible for any new risk. So we pull in all of this telemetry, we analyze it by doing a proper and adequate investigation to look for the indicators, to identify if it's a true positive. And then once we validate it, we start to inform the teams. This is, hey, it's a valid threat. Let's enhance our detection engine. Let's send that data to labs. Let's make sure, like Hafnium, we were seeing web shells spun up in rapid succession. A web shell basically gives you remote access to a server. We all know that's a bad thing when a threat actor gets access. So we created a new detection that saw and stopped those web shells after our threat hunters identify it as a brand new risk and a brand new concern. They validated it, they responded to it, they told our labs team, and then we went out with our detection engineering model to build preventative layers in place to stop it from happening again. And we no longer required the SOC to investigate it, because the frontline agent was blocking an exponential amount of that known risk once it's found. And we typically conduct threat hunts in a couple of different ways. So we have behavioral based and anomaly based. And they're very synonymous, but there are some lines that you should understand. When we talk about behavior-based, this is really understanding we can tell what malicious behavior is. We know how threat actors function. They steal credentials, they normally dump them via LSAS, and then at that point, they're living on the land, traveling laterally, looking for the domain controller, leveraging PowerShell. We know what behavior these threat actors typically leverage because we've seen these ransomware groups time and time again, and we understand how they evolve because we have an incident response team that's catching these new threats day in and day out. The anomaly-based threat hunting is more the stuff that you don't know, the stuff that you can't really understand. Is it real? Is it legitimate? Have I seen this before? It doesn't look like something we've seen before. Let's go out and conduct a threat hunt based off of just the anomaly that is present out in this world. Sorry, I had to quiet my dog. He loves to bark at the squirrel, so I had to shout at him really quick. So we talked about some of the threat hunts in this space. We also talked about incident response earlier, and this is where we get to bridge the gap specifically for, when we do these threat hunts and we identify an active incident, what does this actually mean for us? So we map very aggressively to a lot of compliance requirements out in the world, but specifically when we talk about incident response, NIST and SANS are very important because many of our customers and many insurance companies abide by these mappings as well. I want to focus on these major points here, which is containment, eradication, and recovery. When you actually look at SANS, you will see the same thing: containment, eradication, and recovery. And there's more steps. You've got identification, you've got lessons learned. This is really where, when we talk about true response, I want to go through these categories and highlight how we can help, because this is the meat and potatoes of MDR. When you say manage detection and response, I love talking about the detection capabilities. It's important to understand what we can pull in. But at the end of the day, detecting data is not going to stop you from getting hit. It is the response that matters the most. So first step is identification. How do we know where the accident, if you will, or the event actually occurred? So this is us being able to understand the more information we collect, the better we have to identify where it started, the patient zero, what caused this to happen. Then we move into a containment phase. So we've identified risk, we've investigated it, we validated it, we understand that now threat response or threat containment has to occur. This could be things like isolating the device, this could be removing artifacts, killing processes, cleaning up your registry keys if a malicious key has been added for a persistence attack later, disabling user accounts, getting rid of scheduled tasks, whatever we have to do to once again disrupt, prevent spread, and contain the attack. That is exactly what containment is designed for. This is where we start to go further. So if you need better assistance with complete eradication of the threat, neutralization normally involves root cause analysis. We have to find the hole on the outside of the building and where the rats are nesting in order to get rid of them. If you just put traps in room 102, you are not going to get rid of the threat. And very similarly, Karen, to your customer that got hit, they thought that they got rid of all the rats because they set the traps, but they didn't find the nest and they didn't find the entry point, and it let them linger and stay in for longer than they should. So us being able to go out and build an incident timeline, understand all of the activity occurred from the very first event we can identify all the way to when that incident bubbled its head and showed itself. This is what we want to do with the neutralization efforts. And then once we've neutralized the threat, remediation includes recovery, building a plan to prevent risk. So how do we stop this from happening again? Enforce stronger passwords, enable multi-factor, blocking IPs on your edge if we know that they've been communicating, closing ports, whatever we can do to prevent the rats from coming back into the building. Let's go patch the hole on the outside. Let's go make sure that if they're nesting in the walls that we put some, poison killer in the walls to make sure that we can stop them from building that nest appropriately. This is what we talk about. And this is why that line is traditionally drawn from threat response to incident response. And this is where we as a security team have options for both. We want to be able to bolster you guys in any step of the way because we understand some teams are more prepared, some teams are less, some teams have budgetary issues. How do we fit in your world? We want to have options for everything because we don't want to say, hey, if you can't go with full-scale incident response, we can't help you. That's not a good successful SOC team, and that's not a good MDR. We have options to help in any capacity, and we want to integrate data in any capacity as well. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the integrations because identifying risk is important. And I know I'm bouncing around, but we want to stitch this whole picture together. So why is firewall important for us? Well, I'm sure you guys are aware. It obviously is a north and south tool. It allows things in and it stops things from going out that you don't want to happen. So this is really where for us, we want to look for a lot of these attempts, malicious URLs and command and control communications and intrusion attempts. This scenario is very prevalent. So maybe your endpoint has a scheduled task that gets modified. We as a SOC team are going to live and breathe on every endpoint. So we're going to see that scheduled task modification. But the reality is, if your firewall is seeing a beaconing attempt that allowed a threat actor to get in and augment that scheduled task, or if they're seeing that a user got a URL from an email and they clicked that URL and it took them to a malicious domain and it pulled in a payload that allowed a threat actor access to do the beaconing, you can see that the more visibility we have from that firewall, the better we're going to be able to determine, hey, this is probably a compromise because this isn't just a rogue scheduled task augmentation. This is a scheduled task plus malicious domain communications and beaconing that was successful that paints just a more holistic picture for us. And this is the same across the board for identity, a very important piece for me. Knowing that you have impossible travel where John just logged in the US and Texas an hour ago, and all of a sudden his login's being used in the Philippines, that's strange, that's abnormal. Or maybe John's credentials were logged in successfully, but his Duo prompted John back in the States to verify the login attempt. And John goes, that's not me. I didn't log into anything. He hits reject. And now your Duo platform, your identity management tool is telling you someone has John's creds, but John denied the login. A lot of people disregard these alerts and they don't understand it means credential abuse is happening. So for us, on the endpoint, we have multiple different tools. We have CredGuard, which monitors for credential theft. We have exploit prevention that also looks for illicit credential access. But tying in identity tools that let us know someone from a rogue IP address was trying to authenticate in using your credentials from a completely different country, you can see how holistic that picture gets created now. And it's so much easier for our SOC team to truly understand there is something going on that needs to be addressed. Email is also important. Karen, I know for you, maybe you could speak to this. I might tap your shoulder again. Phishing has become the easiest way for people to get in. And I believe on our incident response team, upwards of like 70% of all active incidents that we've taken on were caused from a phishing attempt leading to stolen credentials. What are you seeing in this space when it comes to phishing and email? Because a lot of people are moving to Microsoft 365. Many of them are just relying on the base protection, but they don't realize you need something sitting in front. You need something to identify this risk because it's the easiest way for threat actors to compromise a user who just doesn't care or know about security. So maybe you could add some context because this one's important for me.
Yeah, I think of all the things that we see phishing as the number one attack vector. And it 1 to 2 times a week, we'll have a client that chose not to do email protection, who will get hit with a phishing email and not really understand why, right? And we've done our due diligence. We've talked to them about why they need email protection. And a lot of times lately, it's been through credentials, right? They click on something, they're like, oops, I didn't mean to do that.
Yep.
Maybe it'll go away. maybe nothing happened. And then come to find out a day or so later, oh gosh, like somebody's been sending emails to all my customers from my account.
Yeah, from your internal account. We actually,
Right.
I had a customer call in, not even yesterday. Someone basically told them that they harvested credentials. They sent an email from the internal organization to everybody else in the organization, not to a customer, but to everybody else internal. And they said, we have your password information. We have your email information. We've actually tapped into any webcams on your local machines and started recording you and sensitive information. Now, granted, I don't know how far that actually goes and if that's accurate. These guys like to fearmonger like crazy. But once they get inside, I mean, if you don't have an adequate tool to identify this, all it takes is credentials to be accessed on the endpoint, and they have access to system information that could be detrimental and it could be encrypted. So I love focusing on email. I think it is one of the most important tools outside of identity because those two go hand in hand. And just being able to see, hey, my endpoint identified a suspicious file. We saw some unexpected access, but you can see here these two bubbles, email letting you know there was a suspected phishing attempt and there was a forwarding rule that was abused in mass forwarding, and an identity platform that let us know of an abnormal login. Now we're getting more robust in our ability to stitch this together. We talk about more telemetry, the better. These are such cool scenarios where we can, hey, that file looks weird. Why is that happening on the endpoint? But being able to know that your email platform saw phishing attempts and your identity platform saw illicit logins, so much quicker to respond because we can paint that picture so much faster for our customers. Same thing with public cloud. This is becoming a little bit of a bigger nuisance for a lot of people because they're afraid to move into the cloud. Maybe they're concerned about it. They haven't done research. They love having an on-prem infrastructure. We can tie into all of these tools, Azure, AWS, Google, so GCP. Our main objective with the public cloud is to really understand when these threat actors gain credentials, they want to go find assets and they want to go find users that they can compromise and abuse. Public cloud is a big one because if they can sign in and augment an IAM access rule to give them more capabilities to go spin up multiple EC2s, spin up new machines. We see this with coin miners a lot, where they'll actually tap into public cloud infrastructure, spin up EC2 instances, and then farm the resources to do Bitcoin mining. And a lot of people don't realize it till they get their monthly bill and they go, why did that increase by $200? And some people don't notice it because they use one or two VMs under the radar and they sit there for years just harvesting resources from these machines, and you're footing the bill. So our cloud posture management tool can tie into the public cloud, capture all of this from illicit spending, user violations, anomalous login attempts, rogue connections, being able to see new users created, new machines getting spun up. Is this you? Is this valid? Another helpful piece. Now, from a network perspective, and this will kind of round off the integrations talk as we near the finish line here, being able to tap into the network, and we saw a couple of tools earlier, things like Darktrace and ThinkST with Canary. We wanted to be able to tie into a lot of legitimate NDRs because they are there to help capture and identify risk on the network. Being able to see, this scenario is another really cool one. Some email came in, it had a malicious attachment. The end user downloaded it, and then all of a sudden a process launched via PowerShell. But being able to see on the network that maybe there is an unmanaged device that has C2 communications going on. There's command and control occurring from a device that you don't deploy an endpoint agent to, or maybe there's lateral movement from multiple devices. Print nightmare was a huge issue last year where a printer connected to the internet was having illicit sensitive data sent to it virtually and then scanned and exfiltrated off, and people couldn't do anything about it until they realized, hey, my printer's at risk. This is what we want to focus on with the network integrations, is capturing a lot of these devices communicating illicitly, helping you manage things that you can't see. But I also talked about Sophos offering their own flavor of a network detection and response. We actually have our own MDR. It's a simple appliance. You deploy it via ESXi or Hyper-V. We also have AWS and Azure deployment models coming very soon down the pipe. But our objective was get you a tool that can sit inside of your network, and these 5 engines help achieve 5 different things. Strictly speaking, device detection analytics, let's help identify all of the devices on your network that you can't monitor because you can't put an endpoint agent on them. Biggest visibility gap, cell phones, tablets, printers, switches, routers, outdated operating systems, BYOD laptops. John in marketing brought his laptop from home, and unfortunately his kid was torrenting tons of games and movies, and he brought in a bevy of threat actors on that box. And as soon as it lands on the network, they're going to have a fun time inside of that network. So we want to help identify the devices, but then the deep packet inspection and the encrypted payload analytics helps us really understand what is happening inside of the packets itself. So we look at this model, you've got your switching and your routers, you would take our appliance, set up a span port, mirror the traffic. So you basically just replicate the traffic that you have in-house. We get to look at it. It then goes through the packet processing container, which gives us access to then identify true risk inside. So I want to highlight this blue box in the middle here. We do full encrypted payload inspection without the need for a man in the middle and without the need to decrypt your traffic. sure everybody here, maybe you're into the networking side of the house, maybe you're not, but if you go ask your network admin, hey, are we decrypting our traffic and inspecting it? They're probably going to laugh at you and go, we're never going to get any business done if we decrypt all of our traffic in real time, because you will move at a snail's pace. So what we do is any packets that move, east and west, decrypted or not, we number one, scan the packet and we pull packet header details. So source IP, source MAC, source port, destination IP, destination MAC address, destination port. We look at the TCP flags involved. We look at the duration of the communication. Was there 20 megabytes of data that took 8 hours to transfer, or was there 6 gigabytes of data that transferred in 5 minutes? Why are these happening? Is this static? Is this appropriate? So all of these pieces of information on the header allow us to build an understanding or a neural network of what we have seen once the packet lands. So we don't know what's inside during, but once it lands, hey, there was Cobalt Strike inside of there, and our model said there was probably Cobalt Strike. So let's augment our model to make sure that we look for those particular attributes again. If we see them in another customer's environment, our model can enhance its prediction of if there is in fact Cobalt Strike inside. And at that point, we flow through our IDS models. We make sure that we cluster and score. So when we talk about scoring, how severe is the risk? What did we see? This is really, I love talking about this example. We had a customer that was using us for NDR, and we saw 4 pieces on the left-hand side under cluster context. These were the header pieces, the attributes that helped us determine something might not be right. We had source IP and destination IP information. We had the application protocol being used, which was rogue protocol, different from what was normal. And then we went through and actually looked at the flow. Our predictive model determined an 85.7% chance that Cobalt Strike was being passed through an encrypted packet and landing in the middle column on an unmanaged internal host. So you're managing a network. There's a device that you can't protect because you can't deploy InterceptX to it or any endpoint prevention. All of a sudden, you now have that device communicating with a successful Cobalt Strike beacon. And without a proper network analytics tool, you wouldn't know that this is going on until that threat actor made its way onto that device, planted their stager, and then started spreading their web to any other devices in the network and potentially causing more disaster than good. We were able to, by simply just placing our sensor inside, we were able to see this rogue device, understand it had a greater chance of Cobalt Strike communicating with it. We worked with the customer. They determined that that wasn't a valid communication. They blocked the IP on their edge right away, and we were able to protect every asset inside from greater risk. And this is a huge, huge advantage. When you look at MDRs and you want to build out the best and most robust solution possible, there are not a lot of vendors that have all of these components. When we talk about third-party data ingest, true network monitoring, hands-on keyboard threat response, full-scale incident response, and even a breach warranty, we now offer for all of our customers that go with the Sophos MDR Complete and give us the ability to provide full-scale incident response. We back our solution with a warranty. And I know there's a lot of vendors out there that have warranties. We self-funded, which means we didn't go out to an insurance carrier and say, hey, we want to offer a warranty for our customers. How can we do this financially, reliably to make sure that our customers don't submit enough claims to where you can back it and we don't have to have people submitting. We didn't want to do that. We self-funded because we know that our protection is great. We know that our MDR is functional, and we know that our incident response is going to be preventative to stop disaster. So we wanted to back all of our customers with a true warranty that gives you absolute comprehensive coverage. We wanted to expand beyond many other warranties. So we do full Windows, full Mac. We do up to $1,000 per breach machine and up to $1 million in total expenses. This is ransomware payments. This is PR. This is legal. This is breach notifications, compliance updates. So we do soup to nuts on this. I am going to preface this because I want to make sure I preface this. If you go with our MDR Complete and you give us access to do the full-scale incident response, our goal is we never, ever want you to have to worry about submitting a claim. The whole purpose of this being here is to make sure that if you are struggling with cyber insurance, you can go to your insurer and tell them, I picked an MDR that is doing full incident response and they gave me a warranty. We've seen people reduce their premiums because of this, because that insurance carrier is going to go, oh, wow, like we're probably not going to have to pay any money for this person again because they're probably not going to get hit. So they have the stuff in line. Maybe let's augment our premiums now, or let's understand and reassess the tools that they have. So this is to make senior leadership happy and to make your insurers very, very happy. We don't want you to ever have to worry about submitting a claim, but there's no such thing as 100%. We have to be prepared for it. So here's where the warranty gets to step in, just in case something does happen. But at the end of the day, everything that we've talked about, this is as comprehensive of an MDR as we could possibly bring to the table. This is what we wanted to do, and this is why we wanted to partner with Secure Content Technologies, is because Karen knows it. We've had these discussions many times, and she's had customers impacted by incident many times. And at the end of the day, there is no silver bullet, but if you want to get as close to 100% and ensuring that you don't have to ever shut your doors, business can function. Your 1 or 2 person IT team can actually take a weekend off or a vacation and not have to panic that they're gone and no one's watching. Send us your telemetry, go enjoy a vacation for once. Finally, we can be your response team. We can stop the damage. We can keep you safe. That is our objective. And, Karen, maybe any other context you want to add. This is a partnership we've been working on for quite some time. And I think it's just such an important one to understand. It isn't a matter of, people want MDR. It really is a matter of people are needing it now more than ever. So, maybe you could add some additional context as we wrap up here today.
I agree with you 100%. We have more confidence and are at ease having MDR at our customers. And some of them do say, oh, hey, we can now take a vacation. We don't have to worry about getting up at 3 a.m. just to an alert. Right?
I mean, everyone's on call today. I mean, that's the sad part. You got a 1 or 2 person security team managing all of these different tools. The expectation is you have your phone attached to your hip. And if something happens, you're the person that's got to get up and get ready to go. So this is such a fantastic augmentation to provide that peace of mind. Now, that's what I refer to it as peace of mind. Someone is always watching and someone is always there to protect you when you need it the most. So.
Very much so. And I do want to point out too, it's affordable for companies of all size, and the peace of mind that it gives to them and to us as a partner with them is worth every penny of this. So if I can help any of you with any additional information, we've had the honor of being a Sophos Platinum partner for over 25 years. So watching Sophos go from an antivirus vendor to full cybersecurity as a service and all the things that entails has just been a true honor for myself.
Yeah. 37 years in the business, and it's one of those things where it's good to see the adaptation of what is needed, and not just the adaptation, but industry leading. I mean, 16,000 plus customers. We are without a doubt the largest, if not one of the largest MDRs that is out there in the world. It truly does speak to a testament of what we're doing here, to know that 16,000 people have come to us for this type of service when the average in the industry is, most of these larger players maybe have 1,000 to 3,000 or 4,000 customers. To know that we've almost 4x that, it just really speaks to the confidence level that people have in what we do. We might not be the best marketing team, we might not have a name on an F1 car, but we do an excellent job at absolutely protecting our customers. And that is what we live and breathe. So I'm excited to teach everyone about this today. And Karen, hopefully we checked off the boxes for you.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you, John. I appreciate your time and your expertise and sharing all this with our audience.
Awesome.
Wishing everybody a good rest of your day and hope to see you soon.